Welcome to the Survive, Scale, Soar podcast. Hear and learn through the success of others how to build the life and business you deserve. Learn to overcome failure, what it means to seek out growth, and how to become the best possible version of yourself. And now, here's your host, coach, entrepreneur, husband and father, and author of the #1 best-selling book, Survive, Scale, Soar, Jeremy Williams.
And welcome back to the Survive, Scale, Soar podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, and I have an amazing guest today. It's Chris Heller, but I've got to give him the proper introduction. This guy has had such a great impact on the real estate industry across the United States and also the world. Chris was, in 1989, the Rookie of the Year. He was a top producing agent in San Diego County and went on to become the #1 KW agent in North America. He was the former CEO of mellowhome, the former CEO of Keller Realty International, and played an integral role in Keller Williams becoming the largest real estate company in the world. Currently, he serves as the Chief Real Estate Officer of Ojo Labs, and he owns the Heller, the home seller team, selling over 100 plus homes a year. And he's been doing that for 30 plus years. The reason I'm having Chris on the show today is he just came out with a best national seller, Dominant Thoughts. He wrote alongside Greg S. Reid. And Chris, welcome to the show. We're going to be diving into some dominant thoughts today.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for having me on. It's always a little embarrassing hearing the introductions. and the other thing is it always makes me feel or sound old. You know, we talk about how long I've been doing this. So
yeah, I think we're all getting old, and you've earned it. You've put in the work. You've earned it. You know, that's one of the things you don't get there overnight. You've done this for a period of time, and you should be honored. I get the same thing, and I understand it's embarrassing sometimes. Well, good. We're going to jump into. So you have 11 dominant thoughts in this book, but before we jump into the specific ones that I'd like to cover today, tell me what got you to write the book?
Yeah, I've thought about writing a book a number of times over the years, and then like a lot of things in life, there's a thing that happens that just causes it to happen. So a little over a year ago, I was on a podcast, and there were 3 guests, and I was one of the 3 guests, and my co-author Greg Reid was one of the other guests. And near the end of the podcast, the host said, "Hey, Chris, when are you going to write a book?" And I said, "Yeah, I've thought about it, but nothing's in the plans." And Greg has written like 40 books. And I said, I'd have to pick Greg's brain on how to do it. And so I left it at that. And then 2 days later, Greg calls me and says, "Hey, you mentioned you want to write a book. I have the title, I have the URL. If you have the content, I'll show you how to do it. I have all the contacts, the publishers, the artists, the editors, everything. And if you want, I'll partner with you on this first one and show you how to do it." And I was like, done. It was one of those things coming together like they often do. And me being able to have a mentor to walk me through the process on the first book. And that's why it got done.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Like sometimes we have those thoughts, maybe those dominant thoughts that are residing inside of us, and it takes someone else to unlock that thought.
Yeah. So I feel very fortunate and grateful for that opportunity, and for having it's funny, the book is a business parable, and it's about a mentor and a mentee. And then the reality is I had a mentor in writing the book about the mentor and the mentee.
It's awesome. It's a great book. And if you haven't picked it up, we'll talk about that at the end, how to get your copy. One of the thoughts in there was, don't be attached to your outcome. What did you mean by that?
That's probably, if you had to pick one, that may be the most critical thought of being successful, especially in the real estate industry. So early on, I observed a lot of things. I would see an agent have a deal fall apart, which happens, right? And at the last minute, the financing blows up, or the seller changes their mind, or the buyer gets hit by a bus, or whatever happens. And I would see that agent get ruined for days and weeks, or a difficult situation, and they get sick, or they want to make the phone call. And what I realized was, when you're attached to the outcome, you're giving away all your power. You're emotionally attached. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your nerves and your anxiety, and you can't be at your best when you're that. So that then begs the question: well, how do you not be attached? What we talk about, and what I've done and used for most of my career, and still do consciously on a daily basis, is distinguish between being attached and being committed. So as an agent, I was absolutely committed that my clients got the best experience, that the deals closed, that their home sold, that they got the home they wanted, that everything happened to exceed their expectations. But I wasn't attached to it. Meaning, if I lost the deal, or I lost the listing, or I lost the client, would it bother me? Yes, it would bother me. But I had a rule, and I called it the 3-minute rule. I'd let it bother me for 3 minutes, and then I would move on. And my commitment was to be the best I could be for my clients, for my family, and for my team. You can't be the best for anyone when you're, an emotional wreck. And I always, I always think in analogies. If we think about a baseball analogy, if you're a baseball player and you go up to bat and you strike out, at your next at bat, if all you're thinking about was how you struck out, how you failed last time, your chances of being successful in that next at bat, because you're attached to what happened the last time, are very, very slim. What professionals do is they look at what happened, they are committed to being better, they learn from their mistakes, and then they move on. And as professional salespeople, we need to be able to do the same thing. So that's the whole genesis of the concept of not being attached to the outcome. And Jeremy, really, if you think about it, if you've ever, and most of us have, been in a negotiating situation, if you're negotiating with someone and you're committed to getting the deal done, but you're not attached to it, you can be a lot more objective. You can be a lot more, you create more leverage for yourself, because if the other person is attached, if they are gripping on too tight, if they are emotionally involved, they'll typically do and say things that they wouldn't want to do. I mean, if you ever watched a poker match, you can tell who the pros are. They're the ones that aren't attached. The ones that are attached are the ones sweating and don't have good poker faces.
Yeah, I know it's when you think about the coaching wheel, right? You've got your programming, you've got your thinking leads to those feelings. That could be the messy spot, and those feelings can lead to actions and then results, which either change the programming or reinforce that programming. And I think that's a great rule. The 3-minute rule is, when you get into that emotional space, the way that you feel about something, is it's okay to experience that. We're human. And to say you could just cut it out, I guess there are some people that can do that, but I have a word for it.
Or pretend to do it.
Yeah, pretend to do it, because deep inside, right, it still really does bother them. I think your point in making that and spending 3 minutes there and moving on is, you can't stay there, because it's going to start impacting your action. Just like the baseball players, you can see them when they're on the hot streak, and then, man, when they fall off, it's like, it's in their head, and they can't get out of that cycle because of those feelings that are there, right?
Yep. So it's a place for all of us to focus on and to strive to, not being attached to the outcomes, be committed to the outcomes.
How does that relate to activities? So, like, in any sales business, real estate, if we look at where we encourage people to lead generate, and they're making calls, and even maybe in this market, they're making more calls before they're getting to that result. Where would this dominant thought come into play?
So if you are attached to the outcome, every time you get a hang up or rejected, it takes you down a little bit more. And you can't be effective when that's happening. So it's not being attached to the outcomes, it's being committed, again, committed to the outcomes. I'm committed to getting, making my contacts today. I'm committed to setting an appointment today. I'm committed to doing all my follow-up today. And not being attached to the outcome, because if you focus on what you're committed to and do the activities, maximize the use of your skills and your attitude and your approach and your expectations, that's what helps you achieve what you achieve, not being attached. That's why, the people that are really attached to it, they quickly go, I don't like this, I can't do this, I hate this, I'm afraid of this, it's because they're taking it almost personally in an emotional level.
Yeah. And a lot of times, this is probably showing up in their world when you can see their business. It's the roller coaster business. It's not like the stair step where they're getting better. You just see it up and down. And a lot of times you can go back, and as you start digging deeper into why, it's the emotional part. They're attaching themselves to those outcomes.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great.
Real estate's enough of a roller coaster without us adding to it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of outside forces we got to deal with just beyond our internal self-talk. So paying attention, that one really interested me because, and I'll tell you what happened this last week with one of my coaching clients is, we're kind of having the conversation, things aren't happening, it's the market, you always hear that, it's the market. And, I really started digging in, and it was like, it's you. The opportunities are all around you. You just have to look for them. You have to pay attention. What are you seeing today that agents might be missing out on because they're not paying attention to what's out in front of them?
Two things quickly come to mind. One is opportunities. They're focused on the negative headlines or the changes that are happening, and because they're focused on that, they're not seeing the opportunities. The other thing is in their interactions with consumers. So let's use a buyer as an example. Buyer says, Jeremy, I'm going to I think I'm just going to hold off. I think prices are going to soften up, rates are too high, just doesn't feel like the right time. An agent who's really paying attention is going to say, well, let's talk about that. When you think prices are going to come down, how far do you think they're going to come down? Well, gosh, in this area, I don't think they're going to come down that much, but they might come down 5 or 10%. All right. So let me ask you a question. If you found the house you loved right now and you could buy it for 5 or 10% less, wouldn't it make sense? I mean, why wait if there's something there now? Why stay a renter? Or the interest rate conversation. Well, the rates are so high, and I don't think it's one of three things is going to happen. They're going to stay high, they're going to go higher, or they're going to go lower. No one has a crystal ball. You're not going to be married to the mortgage. If you buy now and they go higher, you're going to be glad you did. If you buy now and they stay the same, you're no worse off. And if you buy now and they go down, you're going to refinance. So in any case, don't let rates be the deciding factor. The deciding factor should be, hey, are you better off staying where you're at or owning something? And we can talk about that and go through that analysis. But paying attention makes it easier to dig deeper, to hear what's behind the comments or the questions they're saying. One of the things I used to always do in an appointment, whether it's consulting a buyer or a listing presentation, is ask myself, what would have someone say what they're saying? What would have someone ask what they're asking? So instead of focusing on the statement they make, instead of focusing on the question they ask, what's behind that? And oftentimes it's a fear, it's a concern, it's a consideration, and that's what you need to get to. It's not the question or the objection. It's what's behind it, and paying attention is that's what we mean when we talk about paying attention in this context.
Yeah, and I always share that with my clients. I'm like, you're basically a coach. You're just like me when you're sitting there at the table. And you're not going to listen for that, just that initial answer. You're going to want to dig deeper on that, and understand the why and the how they got to that point where they're asking that question, because it's going to give you so much more information to help them make a better decision, and for you as a business owner to make great decisions and ask the right questions.
Yeah. Now there's it's exactly right. But there's a prerequisite to paying attention, and that is to being present, to not have your mind be racing as thinking about what you're going to say next, or what do you need to say next, or how I'm going to answer that question. You should already know that. And if you don't know that, you haven't prepared enough, you haven't practiced enough, you haven't role played enough, because you need to have all those answers inside you. When you do, it's then much easier to be present in the conversations and hear that. We've all been in conversations when you can tell the other person isn't listening. Like, you can tell they're waiting for you to stop talking so they can say what they want to say. And consumers can sense that in agents that are doing that. So it's super important. And this is one of the reasons why it's super important to practice and role play and internalize your scripts and your dialogues. So when you're in a conversation, you're not thinking about, what do I need to say next, or what should I say, or what should I do, or what direction should I go in? You're not having any of those thoughts. You're just listening and present to what the person in front of you is dealing with, or explaining to you, or asking or inquiring about.
I think that's really important. I had a conversation the other day with a business owner, and he wasn't present. And I was sitting there and I was talking, and then how he responded, I was like, you didn't even listen. And I think that's so important, whether you're working on the listing side and helping somebody sell that home, or you're trying to establish and figure out what their needs are to be able to help them on the buy side. If you don't pay attention, it's going to make you look like an amateur.
Yep. Yeah. And it's not, it just doesn't feel good, right? If you're in a conversation with someone and they're not really there, it just doesn't feel good. And people aren't going to hire you if that's the way they feel.
100% agree with that. Well, I appreciate you sharing those. I do have one more question. I put a text out to a bunch of people and said, okay, if you had one question you'd like to ask Chris Heller, what would you ask? And I had 3 or 4 people come back with the same thing. And they wanted me to ask you, what has been your biggest failure in your business world? And then what lesson did you learn from that, and how did you apply it moving forward?
When you say my biggest failure, it's like, which day are we talking about, or which week are we talking about? Because there are failures on a daily basis. All right, let me choose one. Gosh, there's so many. I could go back at any stage of my career. One, several years ago, a big failure on my part was I was in a situation working with others, and I wasn't paying attention to the actions and the signs that were being presented, and I was overriding those things with either doubting myself or wanting to believe something other than what I was seeing. And that caused me, caused all sorts of issues, a lot of pain, a lot of trouble. And ultimately the situation didn't end well. And I didn't handle it as well as I could have or should have, because I was not seeing it clearly. So, from that, I really learned a couple things. I learned is, whenever you're in a situation or a relationship or a job or an apartment complex or something where it doesn't go well, you go, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to live there again. I'm never going to be in one of these situations. Because one of the things it did is it helped me really understand what doesn't work for me. And when you know what doesn't work for you, the flip side of that, what does work for you. So it really helped me get clear on the type of people that I want and need to be around, type of people I don't want and don't need to be around, type of situations where I thrive in, type of situations where I'll struggle in. and some people say, well, that's not a mistake. That's just things that happen. Well, excuse me. I look at anything that I could have done better as a mistake. I don't blame myself. I don't beat myself up over it, but it's something that, I learn from and get better at, and I do. I make mistakes. Yeah, and I wasn't joking. I literally make mistakes all the time. And that happens because I am constantly trying to get better, constantly trying to grow, constantly trying to be better. And when you are doing that, you're going to make mistakes. And they might be little ones, like how you interact with someone, or a comment you make, or a question you don't ask when you should ask, or something you don't check in. There's other types of mistakes. There's investments that were like, oh gosh, I'd love to get that one back. Or I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done that. But that's this life. I want to say this. I strongly, excuse me one second. I strongly believe that it's never about the mistakes. It's what we do when they happen, right? It's never about what happens to us. It's how we react to it. It's what we learn from it, and then what we take forward. So whenever I hear, especially someone younger starting out, or they're afraid to make a mistake, I really try to change their thinking about mistakes, and not have it be a negative thing or a bad thing, but a good thing. It means you're trying hard. If you're not falling down, you're not running fast enough. So I know that was a long rambling answer to the question that those people wanted the answer to, and hopefully that will suffice.
And I agree with that. And mistake might have been the wrong word. Challenges. I like to call them learning opportunities. It's really not a mistake unless you keep doing it over and over again, right? That's when it becomes the mistake. It's, what do you learn from it? How can you improve upon it, and how do you apply it moving forward?
Yeah.
So spot on with that. Chris, man, I appreciate you coming on. You're a great friend. You're an amazing business owner. You've done some really great things that everybody has benefited from. This book is wonderful. I've read it from front to back. I've got it highlighted in a few places where I was like, that really jumped out to me. And specifically the don't be attached to the outcome. I still fall for that one. I think we all do at some level. And how do people get a hold of this book so they can start reading it today?
Oh, there's a little site called Amazon.com. You can go there. We also have a website, dominantthoughts.com. Either one. If you want to learn more about the book, Dominant Thoughts, there's more information about the book, but you'll end up on Amazon either way. So it's available in every format: hardback, paperback, audio, Kindle, and it's an easy read. You said you read it front to back, which I appreciate and glad you did, but it's only 118 pages, so it's pretty easy to do. And I did that on purpose. I wanted it to be a short and impactful type book, similar to a lot of the ones I read when I was younger that were very impactful to me.
Yeah, what I liked about the format was, you have the 11 dominant thoughts, and you have like kind of the summary of those thoughts at the end. It's kind of like a study guide to be able to go back and implement some of those things. You take something big and you get it down to the smallest thing really fast. And I appreciate that about the book, because some of them get really lengthy, and it's like you got to the point really quick. So great book. If somebody wants to connect with you on Ojo or with the Heller, the home seller team, what is the best way to connect with you there?
I'm on almost every social media platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Not on TikTok yet. And then I also have a website, chrisheller.co. So chrisheller.co is my website. But reach out to me on any platform. Happy, and I'll respond to you.
I think people would pay to see Chris Heller dance. So yeah, you won't see me on there either. Yeah. So Chris, I appreciate you taking the time today. Great information. I know the people that are listening in are going to take some things and be able to run with it. That's going to help them not only in their business. A lot of these concepts can help them also in life. So thank you again, Chris, for taking the time.
Hey, Jeremy, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on and everything that you do for the agents and teams you help out there.
Thank you for listening to the Survive, Scale, Soar podcast. If you heard something that made a difference in your life today, share it with someone that might benefit and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Learn more about the host of this podcast and coaching services offered by Red Hawk Coaching by visiting www.redhawkcoaching.com.